Well, first and foremost, good afternoon, everyone. What an amazing day. What an amazing time in our country to come together and talk about these most important issues that are facing our people. So thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here and taking in all this amazing information that we have to know, we have to understand, and get back to the folks that we know need it so very dearly. So we have a really phenomenal panel. The team has done a really good job with no thanks to me. This is all before I came, putting together a panel of experts that's going to walk us through what does this environmental and climate justice workforce development really look like? How do we take this information back to our people? How do we make sense of it? How do we navigate ourselves forward? So again, my name is Montre Moore, hailing from the great state of Wisconsin. And again, more than excited to be with you. We're going to put the bios of our panelists in the chat. Please take some time to review and get a little bit more familiar with just the work that these individuals do. So first, let's go ahead and introduce Gary Ringer, who comes to us from the Elevate Energy Group. Gary is also a coalition member, so we thank him for that. And keep on keeping on, Gary. Thank you for being here. Next on the panel, we're going to bring up Aubrey Agee, I'm sorry, of the Anti-Gravity Organization. Next, we have Carlton D. Jones of the Talent and Development Coalition, also the CarNav Group, and he is also a member of the Midwest BDC. And last but not least, we have Laprisha Daniels. Laprisha comes to us from the Planet Detroit organization. And we want to go ahead and shoot a congratulations to Laprisha, because I heard she has a new role just like myself. So hopefully you're doing really good and getting that off the ground. So we're not going to take any more time. Like I said before, we have so many questions that we want to get through. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. Now we're going to allow either of you to go ahead and speak up. Whatever the questions touches you, please feel free to speak up. And then if there's anyone else that likes to add to those comments, I'm going to give you a few moments to add, and then we're going to go on to the next question. But the big looming question that's out there right now, why is it so important that individuals like us that convene and come together and talk about this work for individual and climate justice advocates to center workforce development in this new green economy as part of our work?
If I can start, and this is going to be a very non-technical answer, and it's the answer that I give my children all the time about why we need to show up in these spaces. And so basically, they need us. They need our innovation, our ingenuity, our creativity, our tenacity. We often also say in sort of the EJ spaces that those that are most impacted by a problem are best suited to identify solutions to the problem. And so green jobs and green entrepreneurship are no exception.
Awesome. Thank you. Would anybody like to add?
I'd like to add to that. I want to just double down on what Laprisha stated. They need us for our innovation to create community amongst this space. Earlier, one of the speakers talked about focusing on we and the relationships. And I think to really make an impact and changing how we, create energy, how we generate energy, how we are good stewards over the planet. We need to act like a village. And so it's not just our expertise, but it's our behavior that they need to see and that we need to be very loud about. And that ties back into what I really love, what you guys said earlier, gave honor to indigenous folks, former enslaved folks. There is a lot to be learned from our ancestors and the ancestors that were on this land. And a lot of it has to do with our relationships and building community and how we approach energy, environmental justice, and energy production.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that information. So with all the focus being on the green economy, how do we as environmentalists participate in this space without perpetuating green capitalism? How do we even brand this work and move it forward?
Yeah, I like to just say when we come into the area of workforce development, especially in this green economy, we've got an opportunity now to lead instead of follow. And it's about trying to be on the front end to develop our people to not for entry positions, but for elevated and high demand areas. So if we are actually implementing processes in our community, we should truly be looking at the total economic effect of it, because one of the things that made our communities just as 40 is being disadvantaged. And the disadvantage is mostly centered around economics. And the economics of actually rebuilding your community is being able to maintain it after it's rebuilt. So that's through workforce development and how we can have the opportunity to engage our people in what happens as we improve our communities.
Awesome. Thank you. Would anyone like to add to that? Okay. So I would like each of you, each of the panelists to answer this next question. What are some of the things that your organization is currently working on to make people aware of the green economy and the workforce development that you're currently focusing on?
I'll follow up on that. We are engaged with this CCG, the Community Engagement Grant that the EPA is out on the streets right now. We're trying to, as a matter of fact, we're in Michigan area, 30 miles outside of Detroit, area called Pontiac, Michigan, which is it's in the Oakland County area. And it's actually one of the richest counties, Oakland County, but Pontiac itself is right in the center, and it's a predominantly Justice 40 community. So when you have a real rich county like that, and yet and still the population in Pontiac, as you know, is mostly Black and brown BIPOC. So we're now believing that we can go after and change this community to reflect more of the county is like. But that's not easy because the work is heavy and hard to get our people to an economic level that we can not only do for ourselves and provide for ourselves, but be there for the long run. And we believe the CCG, the Community Change Grant, could be an opportunity for that to happen.
Excellent. Thank you.
So let me just say, we're doing it by way of not only a program, but a robust workforce development complementing the program, so that when we do have renovation of homes, upgrading homes, we want the people in that community to take part and be a part of that for the long run.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Does anyone else like to share the work that they're doing?
Yeah. I think that I think this organization and a lot of folks that are a part of this, I think they all emulate these few steps that I think are vital. It's about building coalitions. I'm starting a training program with a nonprofit that is deeply entrenched in the community. It is called POPS, and they are a public service organization that is entrenched in in one of the blackest neighborhoods in Detroit. It was a part of Black Bottom before they tore it down. And what we're doing together is they're bringing in folks that want to get trained into installing solar, and they're also bringing in electricians. There's a lot of older electricians, electrical contractors that are out there that would like to get into this renewable energy game, but they don't have the capacity. So we're going to work on together to help them get in there. So we're going to summarize certain trainings to get them involved. We're going to help get their technicians and their future technicians trained and working for them. And then we're also working right now through my organization to get clients. So we have two solar arrays that are lined up already, one for a church and one for an economic development corporation. So it's all about coalition. It's all about seeking others that have a similar vision, but bring different expertise and connections to the game. So it goes back to that village mentality.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Would anyone else like to share?
Yeah, and I can just share. So Plan Detroit is a local newsroom that focuses on environmental health, public health, and to some extent, environmental justice. And what we did most recently was, and we'll continue to update it, we published a guide to a career in green building in Detroit. And so there were options for those who are seeking training or professional certifications in green building, um, a list of local trade schools, community colleges, universities, and then nonprofit organizations similar to what Aubrey was mentioning as well are listed there, so that there are lots of points of entry and points of training for folks. And then what green building jobs are actually open and available right now in Detroit. And so we intend to continue to build out that guide, but that was sort of our first step in making sure that the community knows, has at least some sense of a central place to go to figure out this information. A lot of times the information is spread across this nonprofit's website and that nonprofit's website and this city department's website. And so trying to have a repository for all of that information to be in one place is sort of the way that we are contributing in that space.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Let me just say this. I do see a thread that I'm so proud to be a part of this right here coalition, because as we do our work in our different areas and they're similar, it's important that we kind of support each other. And thanks to the Midwest organization and coalition, we've been able to kind of come together. And I think that's the key for us to really make a difference for the whole.
Awesome. Thank you all for giving us that insight. Is there anything else that we want to share before we move on?
But I do want to say one thing, you know, and I think a lot of us do this here. We do have to roll up our sleeves and we have to be in these spaces as well. I think the policy through the Inflation Reduction Act and other policies come out is help, and it's something to take advantage of, and we could definitely benefit from it, but we have to be in these communities. Even if we're like, I live in the adjacent community to the north end, right? But I'm planning to be in the facility of Pops, you know, 4 days out the week, and in the streets as well, talking to folks about, you know, recruiting people from the community. I'm working with one of the anti-violence organizations that is started by neighborhood folks, people that have been touched by the justice system that are trying to make the community safer. And it's about like being on the streets, talking to these individuals and seeing their ambition, right? And doing something that with their hands, that's meaningful, that's technical, and bringing them in and letting them know that they're a part of this as well. This is theirs. So we really have to push hard in the streets, in the communities, and we have to be there. So that's just another thing. I know a lot of us are doing that, but that's a critical component to our success.
If I can say one other thing, because Aubrey brought to mind, and it might even be a question later on, Montre, I don't know.
Right ahead.
But you know, this idea of sort of what's available in this space is really important too. So it's not just the technical pieces, right? Obviously, there has to be some marketing that happens. There has to be some education around some of these things. I think about when I was at Detroiters Working for Environmental Justice, and just this idea of solar in general. The community does not understand what that means. And so there has to be folks that are in this space. A lot of times the focus is on where's the electrician, where's the person that's going to do the installation, where's the person that's designing it. But there have to be almost, I come from a background of public health, and so I think of like community health workers, right? There's someone that is helping you navigate and understand what all of this means. So it doesn't matter if you have folks that know how to install this thing if I don't want it, because I don't understand what this thing is and of what benefit it is. And so that is also part of this green job sector that sometimes gets overlooked.
Absolutely. That is absolutely key. And sticking with community, let me transition to our next question. Individuals that are coming back to community, citizens rather, that are coming back to our communities after serving time or traveling abroad, whatever the situation may be, transitioning through school. What are some of the barriers that you all are seeing when touching these communities that need to be addressed and people need to be lifting up, so we can definitely speak to them?
I think Laprisha hit the nail right on the head about education, letting people know what they can partake in, right? Letting them know what it is, making it seem like it's, getting over the taboo-ness of it, and helping them understand that they can be a part of it. So I heard this from an indigenous brother that's big into electrification around Minnesota, Wisconsin, and now he's moving over into Michigan. He said he talked to the elders of his tribe. He had to talk to them, I think, 12 times over 6 months so that they understood what it was all about. And then once they understood, then they said, okay, and they ask the same questions over and over again, but you just have to be patient, and you have to realize it's us, it's not them, right? We have to let our brothers and sisters know, like, the knowledge we may have, right? And until they understand, then we can't move forward. But once these tribal leaders understood, the question was, all right, how do we plan for the next 10 generations? And so we have to stay in that mindset.
Wow.
So with those who've been touched by the justice system, those who've been traveling abroad, as I was saying earlier, we have to also not only do the education to make, take the taboo-ness away from this, we also have to let folks know that this is theirs as well. It's not just rich white people stuff, right? It's this technology, this energy, efficiency, and renewable energy is also theirs. So first, and then we get them in our programs. But that programs isn't ours. It's ours, right? They're a part of it. Think of it like cohorts, and think of it like co-ops. Always operate under that mindset and make it easier for them. Yeah.
I think Aubrey hit the nail on the head when he said that first word. Workforce development is all about education. Unfortunately, we've lost the value of education in our community. I'm just going to keep it plain. We've lost the value of education. And when you start talking about workforce development, it's not always entry-level job positions. It's trying to develop a person from where they at to move up to a higher paying, high demand position, but you've got to be willing to be educated. I work in the line of trying to get people to understand the skilled positions does not always require for you to have a college degree, but you do have to be educated in that area to become a skilled trades person. And to come into any type of apprenticeship program, that's an honor and a privilege. So people come in with barriers. We try to do with our CarNav Group, which is part of our coalition, is to become mentors and coaches that we can overcome any kind of barrier if you have the right attitude. And that's education. So if we get them to really believe that they want to advance their life, they've got to accept the fact that they have to have the attitude of wanting to learn. And if we can get our people like that, we can control our destiny a lot more. And that's what this opportunity is before us.
Yeah, I think that's
can I chime in on that?
Excellent. Go right ahead.
I've attempted to traverse numerous apprenticeship programs, and it took me over 20 years to get a journeyman. And it didn't have anything to do with what I wanted to do or what I wanted to learn. It had to do with the legacy of systemic racism within the system of apprenticeship programs and the construction industry, period. So within that being said, statistically, and I've mentioned this before, the state of Michigan, 86% of the construction workforce is comprised of white men. So you can currently go to Leo's website and you can look up, we have an apprentice dashboard. And currently this is data updated through 2023 and has been posted at January 2024. There are currently 11,770 active apprenticeships across 337 active programs in the construction industry. 5% of those are women, 4.8% of those are veterans, 13.5% people of color, and where the huge opportunity lies is 0.8% of those programs are dedicated to youth, so 16 through 18 years old. So when we're talking about, I think we need to really like make sure that we're conscious of what we're saying, because there are people who want to improve the quality of their lives, but haven't had those opportunities or haven't been exposed. And I think most times anything and everything comes through experience and exposure. Once again, I've gone through numerous apprenticeship programs. They did not and were not designed to support what I had going on, where I was coming from, and the needs that I had as an African-American male trying to traverse through the industry. And once again, through my stick-to-itiveness, 20 years later, I was able to become a journeyman in the asbestos abatement industry.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's amazing.
Well, let me just say this, Gary. I agree with you 100%, 100%, because I had the fortunate opportunity to go through a 4-year apprenticeship to become a journeyman carpenter. Now, prior to that, I had already got my bachelor's degree in business. But I'll tell you, I had a mentor who put me in the program, and through 4 years of apprenticeship, I worked with 2 carpenters who looked like me. So you have to have the perseverance and the understanding that the numbers will not align for that exposure in our community. So we've got to work real hard to say, whoever we get in that tracks, that you may be learning from somebody who don't look like you. But we got to support them and mentor and coach them to retain them, because once you get these skills can last you and benefit you for a lifetime. So the numbers is what Gary was saying is absolutely true. And most of these high paying, demanding skill positions, we have to work real hard to get our young people or folks who want to really truly make a commitment to go in. And it's 3 things we tell them. You got to have the right attendance, you got to have the right attitude, and you have to be able to come in and be willing to work with any and everybody in a teamwork environment. And if we can get that across to them, there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. They can succeed. But I think right now, we got an opportunity to control our own destiny if we get working collectively together.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Gary, I know you joined us a little bit late. Did you get a chance to speak about your organization, the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Montre. Gary Bringer, based out of Detroit, Metro Detroit area, currently in Redford, Michigan. I do a lot of work in regards to energy efficiency support before the energy efficiency upgrades come. So once again, abatement, remediation is somewhat my specialty, but more importantly, educating residents in regards to what's necessary in order for them to have a healthy home, in order for them to understand the opportunities that are laid before us currently, but then also the opportunities not only from the standpoint of enhancing your quality of life where you're at, but to utilize this as an economic ladder to improve the quality of life for your family for generations to come within the clean energy sector.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for sharing. Let's talk a little bit more about what type of careers, trades, entrepreneur opportunities are out there in this green economy. Let's really nail that down.
Well,
So
I want, Aubrey, you want to go ahead?
all right, I'll go quick. So there's a huge demand for energy efficiency work. There's a huge demand for solar installation, and with the Inflation Reduction Act, there'll probably be a large demand for geothermal installation as well, and anything else electrification. So heat pump installations, as well as EV charger installs and repair and maintenance. But there's one thing I think that we don't really talk about a lot, but I'm working on this right now. For all my clients, I'm studying what they can do with their rainwater runoff. So typically in every major city, you pay a hefty amount, especially if you're like an organization that has like a parking lot, and you pay a lot for your drainage. So rainwater drainage is a huge cost. So there's ways to take that water and not put it in the sewage system and put it into like your rain gardens or your garden beds or even just your grass, and you could save on your utilities. So I say all that in that there's opportunity in that. I know a brother that sets up rainwater rainwater barrels and irrigation for urban farms. There's also a big opportunity, even though it's not highlighted a whole lot, to do that for churches and organizations that have large parking lots. So there's a lot of demand out there, and it's really up to all of us to help folks get into those positions.
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say, individually in the skilled trades area, there's a high demand for electricians to get in the electrical area. And one of the things I will say, if you really truly want to become in this area of electrification and you have a desire to want to be getting into it, I would recommend that you consider this area of being an electrician or an electrical field. And you don't necessarily have to pursue all the way to become an electrician, but I would say you need to understand electricians use math. And that's one of the areas that our students have been really graded real low when they're coming out of these high schools with a low math aptitude. And we're trying to cut that off at the path and reach back to the K-12 system to emphasize how important it is to put more emphasis on their math skills. Matter of fact, all the skilled trades people use math. HVAC people, heat, vent, air conditioning folks, they're high in this area. Plumbing is another high area. And carpentry, IT people with the emphasis on energy auditing. Now, the energy auditor is one who really can be engaged with this process because they also cross over to community engagement. Because when they're coming in and auditing your facility or your home, you want to have somebody who's pushing it, who you can trust and you believe. And that's why we got to do this collectively. And it's not just about getting a job, but it's about educating our people in a way that we know how we can take full advantage of this and not let the past block us from this great opportunity in the future.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. I've heard a lot today about education, and this is going to be the last question for the panel right before we wrap up. How do we get into these schools, these urban schools within our community? How do we go back to them and ensure that they are engaged in this green job opportunity, this new economy? And again, like you're saying, really ensuring that not only the administration, but as well as the students know and understand what's happening and are able to take part.
If I can go, I think getting into the schools probably isn't that difficult. STEAM and STEM is sexy right now. I think the challenge is probably more the engagement of the students. And it's so important, based on what Mr. Jones just said, that math is going to be important. Science is going to be important in order to prepare folks for these jobs and for these opportunities. So as early as we can make the connection between those math skills and how they're applied in real life, the better. I'll give an example that's a little off topic, but my nephew was more interested in geometry when he realized it could help him build out a game, a world in gaming. I don't quite understand how it works, but he could build a world because he understood geometry. So then he was more interested in geometry. And so similarly, if I can understand why it's important to know this thing because it connects to this outcome I would like to have, then you're going to be more likely to grasp the interest and the imagination of young people. We all took math. We know we're like, why do I have to understand imaginary numbers if they're imaginary? Why does this even matter? Why do I have to remember the quadratic equation? Why is this important? And so the more we can make those connections early on to get folks connected to and interested in how math can later be applied and help me get the livelihood I want, help me get the car I want. I'm thinking of, fifth grade boys. That's what you think of. What car do I want? So if this occupation, if me learning this math will get me the occupation that'll get me that car I want, then yes, I'll sign up for your STEM program, right? So making those connections early is important.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. Anyone else would like to add to that before we transition?
Well, I'll just say this. I'm so glad that the sister spoke to the fact of how that education and connecting to this generation. We have to admit that they're not getting exposed to the vocational training that some of us got in the past. They removed a lot of the vocational training, so you don't get the exposures. You're saying you don't get exposed to it. You don't really know how valuable it could be for working with your hands, but you got to have your head. And so, because these are some of the smartest people, the people who are engineers, the people who are electricians, they need to be very good at their analytical skills. And you get that from understanding that at early age. And see, it goes back to with us being blocked out of a lot of the trades. We didn't have uncles, brothers, and stuff who was in the master trades. So now we've got to have this exposure. And if we can get that exposure in the K-12 system, where I know I went to some school systems, they automatically requiring now that you have some kind of like work study going on in your high school. It's required. So they need to kind of put what they're learning to practice while they're in high school, because when they come out, they can just migrate right into a working environment and be ready to know that they may need to have another 3 to 4 years of training as a skilled person, and not just discounting going to college. But if your track is for a skilled trades person, you want to get skilled training. And that's how you get into apprenticeship and evolve from that. And I know some schools are doing it. And I think if we do more job to connect the exposure to how that is to your later life success for a career instead of job.
Love it.
Can I add on to that?
Go right ahead.
I think Mr. Jones is spot on. I think, and then Laprisha, what you said about finding the interests, right? So we know, like Mr. Jones said, a lot of the programs were taken out, right? Because 120 years ago, we probably were doing a lot of that work predominantly, right? So opportunities are like systematically removed. But what we need to do is appeal to folks. And I think one thing, not just like we appeal to them about, okay, they can earn good money. We can also tie it to things that they really enjoy, like video gaming, right? And then also, and that's just one example. Also, we can tie it to being protective and being able to be a strong contributor to their family and to their community. So if you think about it, so many homes, especially I know in Detroit, and this is the case probably in most urban areas, need all of this work, energy efficiency, weatherization, all this stuff. So if you could say, hey, young man and young lady, you can learn this and also get some free materials, and then you can take care of your grandma's house, right? So there's that angle as well. We don't want to just push, and somebody mentioned capitalism getting in the way, and it does. Because capitalism is about like self-interest, making money for self. But these skilled trades help us take care of our people. Yeah. And so we need to really encourage those that get into these programs or are interested in it, that they can take care of their families, their neighbors. The little old lady down the street that always takes care of them, they can help return that to them, to the little old lady, right? So that's something we need to push too. And again, that's part of the community element that we need to continue to remind folks. That's why we do this.
Building whole communities. I hear you. That's amazing. Thank you for those compliments. We're right at a little bit after 6 after the hour. Is there any questions in the chat that we need to maybe get to really, really fast before we have to move on?
Let's see. Okay, is anyone on the panel looking at the maintenance opportunity of solar panels, which will be an industry of its own?
Yeah. So I've looked into that. And so I've been a part of solar installations off and on for like 5 years. And panels, they're maintenance, but it's the components that are attached to the panels. I had proposed to the utility that one way they can transition over from just, putting up power plants and building more robust grids is that they can outsource to neighborhood organizations, companies to maintain solar arrays. So yes, there are certain components that fail more so than others. And that is a big industry. So I agree with that, Derek. That's an industry in itself as well.
And then Cheryl has a question. She's coming off mute.
I'm sorry, I didn't know how to unmute and get into it when you were, I was really raising my hand for the educational part. Being a former science teacher, this was something that I noticed because you don't have the vocational courses going on, and I was in high school as well as elementary school and upper grades. Being a science teacher and being an older person, knowing about vocational stuff and drop jobs, my science classes were different. I sought out information where those skills were incorporated in the lessons at a level where the kids could think it's playtime. You know, what do we need to build a house? And take them places outside to see things, to expand their knowledge, get the videos, whatever you have to do to introduce it. Unfortunately, in the educational programs for teachers, they don't teach any of this about career development, not at all. So that's where it really starts at the college level, that's teaching, educating the teachers on how to do this for job creation. Because the everyday teachers, they're not in this circle. They know nothing really much about what's going on unless they're super geek like me. And they make that paycheck and that's all. And the principals don't push it either. They're disconnected from society as well.
Great point.
So that's my comment.
Let me just jump in there, because I had worked with the school systems a little bit, and that's as much as I like to be able to say they're receptive. But what I was told when I came in and tried to do some of the things we're talking about is that they have such a strict curriculum that they have to follow. That
Yes.
it's very challenging to come in there and try to put something new to the teachers to incorporate, because they got these curriculums they must follow. And since they're funded by the state, they're trying to achieve those curriculums. Mm-hmm. So we got to work real hard to make sure that even at a higher level, that we work to get these curriculums more conducive for educating our people. Now, it could be across the board, but it's really our folks need more exposure. Yes. And if we don't expose them at an early age, like middle school and before they get to high school, middle school is where they should be getting it. They should be getting it hands-on at middle school, so that when they go to high school, they can already be on a track. Yeah. Put them on a track, and then that way that they're off and running. And so when they're looking for work, part-time work, they're looking for part-time work in the area where they're trying to find a career. So we got to work real hard with the school systems to try to see if we can make sure we incorporate more vocational training as part of the curriculum.
Gotcha. Thank you so very much. I'm getting poked on the shoulder right now. This has been awesome. Thank you to this amazing panel. Thank you, Carlton, Gary, Laprisha, and Aubrey, for all of your support and hard work. Keep on keeping on. And back to you, Mrs. Jackson.